Always a pleasure to welcome in our Daily Faceoff prospect and draft analyst, Stephen Ellis, to the program. And Stephen, your new draft rankings is out now. Let's start right at the top. I got a couple of questions for you. One, Matthew Schaefer is your number one. How confident are you that he'll stay there? And two, is there anyone else in the top 10 who maybe you're a bit higher on than most?
So it's a tough one there when it comes to Schaefer because he is going to be out long term. But talking to a lot of scouts, like they're saying the things you see in him are some of the same qualities that make guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes so effective. Just the way he thinks, the way he moves, and the way like when he left Canada's World Junior team with his collarbone injury. Like you could tell the difference that blue line immediately felt because just suddenly they lost a guy who was going to go out there and do pretty much everything important with the puck. So that was a tough one there. But I do think that Schaefer has a very good shot there. I think it really just depends on which team takes first. I know a lot of people in Buffalo are wondering like, oh, do we need to take another defenseman number one? Like when we can get James Hagens, we can get a Michael Misa or Porter Martone. But I think if you're picking best player available right now, you don't find defensemen like Schaefer often. And I feel pretty confident he would have been the first defenseman taken last year in a draft that was dominated by defensemen. Now, to kind of keep in that same conversation, you see Kashawn Aitchison there at number 7. He's someone I'm really excited about. I did a feature on him where I called him the Punisher because this is someone who will go out there and just lay out the biggest hit you're gonna see. He'll then look around, ready to take on a fight, but no one wants to take him on. I actually asked a few players who wanted to stay anonymous, and they're like, we don't care if he just hit our best player. Like, I'm afraid of him. Like, we're afraid of him. We're not going after him because he goes out there with an intention to knock you down, but then he's got the skill to go out there and beat you defensively and beat you offensively. So I got him number 7. Most people don't have him top 10. I wouldn't be surprised if he's taken in the top 5 because there's just no defenseman like him in this draft. He's kind of like if Radko Gudas had a lot more skill.
I was going to say the forward version or the defense version of Zach Kassian.
If Zach Kassian could also put up a bunch of points, which he did at points of junior.
He was a 20-goal scorer in the NHL.
Yeah. That's obviously not what we remember him for, but when it comes to that, it's like, I think there's going to be a ton of teams looking at Aitchison and saying like, he competes so hard every single shift, and physicality might not even be the biggest part of his game. That might be defensively, and that's important.
Okay, so as teams have conducted their amateur and pro scouting meetings the last few weeks, there's been some thought emanating that this draft class is deeper than originally thought. Is that accurate, or do you think we're just at a stage now where teams and yourself are falling in love with guys on the board?
I think it is a little deeper than most people we're expecting here. And I think that's because you look at some big seasons out of guys like, let's say, Simon Wang, who's been playing with the Oshawa Generals, a guy that for his, he's 6'6", but he's super mobile. I don't think anyone saw a guy from the OJHL for at least the first part of the season going and being a potential first round pick. Carter Bear's been dominant. You look at Nathan Bem out of Kamloops has kind of just come out of nowhere. Like there's a lot of guys who are just, you look at the stats last year, you look at some of the elements of their game and say, okay, yeah, they're fine prospects, nothing special. But this was the hardest first round list I've actually had to make in a long time because it felt like there were just so many players that were kind of pushing their way in. And then you look at someone like Ivan Ryabkin, who a lot of people had as a top 5 pick, not even a first round prospect anymore. So I do think that there's a lot of competition, a lot more than people expected. And that's what you want, especially at the top where you can ask a ton of scouts to give their top 5 and you might get 5 completely different top 5s. That's exciting.
Yeah. So who would you say is the biggest riser from the last time you did the rankings?
Well, at least of anybody of note, it's got to be Carter Bear of the Everett Silvertips. Just talking to some of his teammates, specifically Landon DuPont, the top prospect for 2027, they just look at how physically fit he is, all the attention to detail that he brings to his game. And then you see those numbers there where, he probably is going to get over 50 goals. He could get around 100 points this year. Like such a productive player on an Everett team that is looking really good in the WHL. But when he's in the lineup, he makes them so much better. And I feel like we were robbed of getting to see him at his full health at the CHL USA Top Prospects game because he was sick for the first game and didn't play a lot in that second game. But he's so creative, so smart, and he's always working hard to get the puck. So originally, I wasn't sure if he was a first-round prospect. I got him at number 14 in my newest rankings.
I'll ask you the downer side of that question, I guess. Who's been the biggest faller since your last rankings?
Yeah, it's Luka Radivojevich, and you might remember that name because he's been in 2 World Juniors, but also his dad is a former NHLer in Branko Radivojevich. And when it comes to the style that Luka plays, there's the skill there. He's played a lot of minutes already with the Slovak junior team at different levels, and has always been one of their better players. And kind of like almost like Aaron Kiviarju the last couple years of Finland, he was always playing a ton of minutes and a lot of hype there, but in the end, we're talking about a 5'10" defenseman who doesn't throw a lot of hits, can make a bit too many mistakes. And I think we're talking about someone now who there was some first round pedigree, might be second or third at this point. There's still no question that he could be a skilled player, but I don't know how dynamic he is. It feels like his play could be a bit predictable at times, and he got exposed to that at the World Juniors. But at the same time, I thought he was one of Slovakia's better players. And is that an indictment on Slovakia? Maybe. But in the end, we saw someone who started the year in the SHL playing against men in Sweden, and now he's playing in the USHL. And it feels like after a great start, a bit of the hype has kind of worn off there. And again, the fact that he's not a big defenseman is not going to help him. Not everyone's going to be Lane Hudson out there.
And we got through another segment where we've learned a new word, the biggest faller in the draft. Way to go, Tyler.
All right. I'm sorry for that. Steven, even if the questions weren't great, the analysis was. Appreciate your time. Full draft rankings out now, dailyfaceoff.com. We'll chat with you again next week.
Yep. Thanks so much.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.